Okay, now that we've seen what a token is, what we're going to do is create a service so that we can create a token on demand based on the information in our user object. And we're going to populate this token property with an actual JWT token. So we'll head back to VS Code, and what we'll do is we'll keep this contained in our API project. So inside the API folder, we'll create another new folder and we'll call this services. And inside this services folder, we'll create a new class and we'll call this token service. And inside this class, what we're going to do is create a single method to create a token. So we'll say public, and it's going to be a string that we're returning here, and we'll call a method create token. And we'll take in the app user as a parameter. And we'll need to bring in the app user from domain as well. So our token can contain claims about the user. So the user claims their username is something. They claim their user email is something. And what we'll do is we'll populate a list of claims that we're going to add and send back with our token. So what we'll do is we'll save our claims equals a new list of type claim. And we should be able to bring in system collections generic for the list and system security claims for the claim type that we're using here. And we'll say a new claim, and inside here we'll specify claim types, and we'll have one for the name. And the name claim is going to be the user.username. And then we'll just copy this down 2 more times, and we'll add a second claim for the name identifier. And this one is typically used for the user ID. So we'll use that, and then the third claim we'll specify their email address, and we'll use the user.email in there. Now you can add as many claims as you want. You could add things like date of birth if you were tracking it, and various other things you could put inside your claims, but bear in mind this token is going to be sent with every single request that your client makes to your API. So do bear that in mind, but you can store various pieces of information, and when a user authenticates to the API, they'll be presenting this token. And from this token, you can extract the claims that you're interested in. So just put in there the sort of things that you might need when a user authenticates to your API. Now, I'm not saying that we need all 3 claims here. I'm just adding these as an example. What we also need to do is sign our token. And we sign our token with an encrypted key. Now, what we're going to do is create a key, and we'll say var key equals new, and we'll say symmetric security key. And a symmetric security key means that it can only be decoded by a single key, and that key is going to be stored on our server. It never leaves the server. And what we'll do is we'll specify encoding, and then UTF-8, and we'll need to bring in system.text for the encoding. And then we'll specify get bytes, and we'll just use a bit of text for our key here, and we'll say super secret key. Now there are some rules about this key. It does need to be 12 characters at least, and we're just developing our app at the moment, and this is not what I would consider to be a super secret key. It's just a string of text. Please bear in mind we're just developing our app. When it comes to publishing, we'll generate a random long string of text, which will genuinely be a secure key. But for now, we're just developing our app, so we'll keep things nice and simple and just hard code a string in there for the time being. What we need to do then is generate some credentials for our token. So we'll say var creds equals, and we'll say new signing credentials, because our token needs to be signed by the server. And we'll pass in the key that we just created as the first parameter. And the second parameter will say security algorithms, and then we'll just use a secure algorithm to encrypt our key, and we'll use the strongest one available, HMAC SHA-512 signature. And then we need to describe our token. We need to tell it about the claims, how long it's going to last before it expires, and we also need to pass in our signing credentials there. So what we'll do is we'll say var token descriptor equals new security token descriptor. And inside here, we'll populate the properties we need. So we need a subject, and the subject contains our claims. So we'll say new claims identity and pass in the list of claims we created earlier. We also need the expires, and how long do we want our token to last before it expires. And what we'll do for now is say date time and bring in using system. And we'll say now and add days, and we're just going to specify 7 days. Now, a bit later on, we're going to take a look at slightly more advanced topics here with concepts such as refresh token, so that we can reduce the amount of time before the token expires. And when the client is logged into our application, it can automatically refresh the token. That's for later on. For now, all we're interested in doing is continuing to build our application and get the functionality in place, and we can come back and deal with that later. So don't worry about this being bulletproof security whilst we're developing the app. We're going to tie up security loose ends a bit later on. And for the third parameter here, we're going to add signing credentials and set this equal to creds. So then we can go about the business of actually creating our token, and we need to create a token handler to do this. So we'll say var token handler equals new JWT security token handler. And we'll need to bring in system identity model tokens JWT. Then we can create the token. So we'll say var token equals token handler dot create token, and we can pass in the token descriptor. And finally, we can return, and we can say token handler once again, and then we can say write token, and we can pass in our token. So this is going to return to us an actual JWT token that we can return when a user logs in, and from then the user will be able to use that token to authenticate to our API. But first of all, we need to, because we've created a service here, we want to be able to inject this service into our account controller. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to go to our identity service extensions once again. And what we'll do, we'll just say services, and then we're going to say add scoped to add this service, and we're going to say token service as the type, and we'll need to bring in API services. And this will mean that our token service is available when we inject it into our account controller. It's going to be scoped to the lifetime of the request, the HTTP request to our API. And then what we can do is head back to our account controller, and we'll go up to our constructor, and we'll inject the token service and call it token service. And we'll bring in using API services, and we'll just initialize the field from parameter. And that added it in completely the wrong place. So let's just remove that from there and add it in here. Okay, so now we've got access to the token service. What we can do is come down to our token, and we can say token service.create token and pass our user. And what we can do then is go test. And what we'll do, we'll head back to Postman, and we'll rerun this request to log in our user, and I'll click on send, and this time we get our token back. So let's go ahead and copy this into the clipboard, just so that we can take a look and decode this token. We'll head over to our browser, and we want to go to jwt.io, and this will allow us to decode our token and see what's inside it. So we've got this section here for encoded, and I'll just paste in the token here. We can see the algorithm that was used. We can see that this is a JWT token. Then we see our claims inside here. Unique name is Bob. That's our username. The name ID is the user's ID. And then we've got the email address of the user. And then we've got the not valid before. When can this token actually start being used? That's normally the date and time it was issued. We have the expiration time, which is going to be 7 days after the token was issued. And then we also have the issued at date and time as well. And our token is also signed with our encrypted key, which means our token cannot be modified without actually changing this particular key as well, which means it will not be accepted by our server. The only way we could modify this token and it be accepted by our server is if we actually type in our key into Lisp, but we're not going to do that. And we're going to let our API authenticate our token. And what we're going to take a look at next, now that we can issue tokens, is take a look at how we can authenticate to our application.